Now, that was a much better preseason game than last week, and what a way to round out this preseason for the Green Bay Packers, just finishing their third and final preseason game versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we have a very interesting couple of days coming up. In my opinion, it makes it a lot harder to craft out this 53-man roster. A lot of the players that I had circled for this game showed up today and made plays. Players that maybe, if they didn't show up and make plays, I wouldn't have them on my 53-man roster. Well, a lot of them did today, and we're going to dive down into that in this video, going over my instant reaction and takeaways to this Green Bay Packers preseason week 3, where again, none of the starters played. They didn't need to. We saw a lot of the back end roster depth, and man, some guys made some plays out there. There was a lot to take away from this game, compared to last week where there was very, very little to take out of this game. The Packers won 30-7, so a lot of action on offense, a lot of turnovers created on defense. Simply a lot happened here. I'll be releasing my 53-man roster prediction on Monday. Roster cutdown days on Tuesday, so I kind of want a couple of days for this to settle rather than making my 53-man roster prediction right now, right after the final preseason game with some recency bias, because there was an entirety of the offseason, the training camp, all 3 preseason games to take into effect, not just this one. So I might end up putting a player on my prediction roster just because they had a good game in week 3, whereas maybe another player had overall a better camp. So I didn't want that to happen, so I'm going to wait until Monday to release that video, so be on the lookout for that. Click subscribe, turn on post notifications, and you won't miss it. So firstly, let's go over all the players that didn't suit up in this game versus the Ravens. It was a total of 38 players, and a lot of them you would expect, but some of them were pretty interesting. So let's quickly go down the list. I'll put it up on the screen here for you guys. Quay Walker, Josh Jacobs, Christian Watson, Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, Tay Wicks, Javon Bullard, Eric Stokes, Robert Rochelle is injured, so that's why he didn't suit up. Jair Nixon, A.J. Dillon also injured. Xavier McKinney, Marshawn Lloyd also injured. Evan Williams, I thought maybe they'd have him in this game and not Javon Bullard, but they took both of the rookie safeties and said, hey, we're comfortable with what we've seen in preseason. Obviously, they're both making the roster, but they're pretty much say, hey, we're comfortable with what we saw. We know what they are to our defense. We're all good there. So interestingly enough, none of the top rookies played in this game. Valentine didn't play. Eric Wilson, Zach Tom, Rashawn Gary, and Igbari. Edgerrin Cooper didn't play. So I was really hoping we'd see Edgerrin Cooper at least in one preseason game. Maybe they just felt he wasn't ready to go yet. Isaiah McDuffie, Rasheed Walker. I remember a couple of months ago, people are like, oh, Rasheed Walker's job isn't safe. I think he is one of the safest jobs on this offensive line right now in terms of left tackle. I mean, they love him there at left tackle. Spencer Weege, I believe, was inactive with an injury. Josh Myers, Andre Dillard, very interesting one here, guys. This pretty much solidifies it to me that Andre Dillard is tackle number 3. He will be making this 53-man roster. Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, same thing. Not that Sean Ryan wasn't going to make the roster, but him not playing almost says, okay, they're comfortable with what they've seen. He's going to be right guard number 1 entering week 1. Jordan Morgan was giving him a run for his money until he got injured and still didn't return in this game. Would have liked to see Jordan Morgan at least in one preseason game. So who knows when we'll actually see him get some snaps. It'll likely be in the season, say if they want to make a switch or an injury happens and they need to put him in. Tyler Davis out with injury. Tucker Kraft, Romeo Dobbs, Luke Musgrave, Lucas Van Ness. So they've seen enough from LVN this preseason. Preston Smith, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and Kenny Clark. So a lot of the ones you would expect there, but also some on this list that kind of a telltale sign to what to expect in the next 3 days. All right, so now let's dive down into the game, and we'll start on the offense. Of course, we're all kind of looking at this game as a final showdown, Sean Clifford versus Michael Pratt for quarterback number 2. And although there wasn't any wows per se, both quarterbacks finishing with right around the same quarterback rating. Michael Pratt is 78.5, Sean Clifford is 77.4. Pratt's would have been a lot higher if he didn't throw that interception and then go try to make a tackle and almost injure himself. I think he just got the wind knocked out of him. But he finished 8 for 12, 80 yards, a touchdown. Sean Clifford, 6 for 14, 53 yards, and a touchdown. But Sean Clifford also started the game 1 for 7, then was swapped for Michael Pratt, and they were kind of just swapping every drive or two the quarterbacks. If I had to choose, and I had to say who will be the Green Bay Packers quarterback number 2 going into the season, I think it's Michael Pratt. I think right away it's Pratt, but the Packers could also look at what happens around the league with roster cutdown day and say, hey, we want to go get this guy and put him on the roster, or we want to trade for Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the Cleveland Browns. That very well could happen. But in terms of who's on the roster right now, I think the 2 quarterbacks, Jordan Love and Michael Pratt, and Sean Clifford to the practice squad. Obviously, we'll go over this more in my 53-man roster prediction. Now, the run game was killing it in this game, guys. The run blocking was phenomenal, and that's usually not something we see. Obviously, a lot of backups on that offensive line. We saw Lecitus Smith out there, Royce Newman, Jacob Monk, a ton of snaps at center. We also saw Donovan Jennings for, I believe, the first time, so it was nice to see him out there. Who knows if he'll make the 53 at this point, just because of a lack of play time, a lack of practice. Just might go to the practice squad. We saw Glover at right tackle, Telford at left tackle. Then we also saw Tenuta and Jones come in, but they ran block really well. I mean, these running backs feasted against this Baltimore front seven. Ellis Merriweather, 16 carries, 74 yards, 4.6 average. Nate McCrary, 11 carries, 64 yards, 5.8 average. Emmanuel Wilson, running hard. Emmanuel Wilson has great patience. Like when he gets the ball in his hand, he has great ball carrier vision, but he also has great patience. He can let blocks develop, find the running lane, and attack it. 11 carries, 52 yards, 4.7 average. I mean, the team overall, 39 carries, 193 yards, 4.9 average. They ran very, very well, and they really didn't have to pass too much because they ran so well. I think Emmanuel Wilson makes this roster. I think week 1, he could be running back number 2. I think A.J. Dillon with the neck stinger might not be ready. Marshawn Lloyd might go on IR, opening up that third roster spot for running backs such as Emmanuel Wilson. That's my guess. Again, we'll go over it in my 53-man roster. I don't want to go over it too much right now because we still have a few days until that point. In terms of receiving, again, you're kind of circling a couple guys here. You're circling Malik Heath and Grant DeBose. Who's fighting for that 6 wide receiver spot? You also have Bo Melton, who I mentioned in my recent video, could be involved in a trade with the Green Bay Packers. We'll see. But Malik Heath, 4 for 39, 1 touchdown, showed up as the number 1 wide receiver in today's game in terms of most yardage at 39 yards. Samori Torre made a couple nice catches, 2 for 28. Emmanuel Wilson, 2 for 26, also utilized in the receiving game. Bo Melton had a great touchdown catch, 1 catch for 18 yards. That back shoulder slot fade, it's pretty much same play, same concept that we saw week 1. The Packers ran with Dontavian Wicks, just this one was more towards the goal line, more of a back shoulder throw. Beautiful throw by Michael Pratt. So Bo Melton making a play here. Joel Wilson, 2 for 11. Dimitri Stanley, 2 for 7. And Henry Pearson, 1 for 4. So overall, when you went into this game, you're going, okay, who's quarterback number 2? Is Emmanuel Wilson making this roster? And who's wide receiver number 6? I think out of those 3 things, you only really are certain on one, and you can't even be that certain. But I do think Emmanuel Wilson makes this roster. And then the other 2 are still kind of question marks. Who's quarterback number 2? Honestly, it could go either way. Like I said, I think it's going to be Pratt. And then as for wide receivers, you kind of also ask yourself, hey, could they keep 7? They very well could keep 7 wide receivers and just keep both Malik Heath, Grant DeBose. They can both contribute on special teams. They can both run block. Bo Melton, more of a slot guy, which is kind of the backup to Jaden Reed. So I think they kind of need him on the roster. But I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens for this offense on 53-man cutdown day on Tuesday. As for the defense, you also had a couple of guys circled to say, hey, what are they going to show today in order to make this roster? Anthony Johnson Jr., who I think definitely makes the roster, but he got a ton of snaps today, so that also shows me that, hey, the Packers still want a good look at him to make sure that, yeah, we're going to keep this guy on the roster. Kalen King. I think Anthony Johnson Jr. and Kalen King and Tyron Hopper, these guys got so many snaps in this game, and man, Kalen King looked great out there. Read and react, nickel cornerback, physical, coming down, making multiple hits, forcing a fumble in this game. I really liked what I saw from Kalen King, and, you know, it's a question. Are they going to keep 6 cornerbacks? I think the first 5 are locks, in my opinion. You know, Jair, Stokes, Nixon, Valentine, Ballantyne. I think they're all locks. I think it's just a matter of, will they keep 6? And could it be, you know, Kalen King or Robert Rochelle? I think Robert Rochelle being hurt and Kalen King playing in this game and King playing really well obviously bodes better for him, even though it's just this game. I really liked what I saw from Kalen King. I don't know if I'd really trust getting him on a practice squad, and I know we say this every year and we overvalue certain players, like, oh, another team would definitely grab them, and that rarely happens anymore because there's so many practice squad spots, but I actually would be a little worried doing that. Then you also have players like Aaron Mosby and Christian Welch, who, even though played amazing in this game, still probably won't make the 53-man roster, which sucks because both of these guys had excellent games, and Christian Welch has looked great this preseason. I just don't see the Packers keeping 6 middle linebackers. They could really favor it in terms of special teams and say, hey, Christian Welch is a great special teamer, so is Eric Wilson. let's keep these guys here. Tyron Hopper looks great. He looked good in this game against the run. I mean, this guy looks like a true great run defender. I didn't really notice him bad in coverage, but the Ravens didn't really throw the ball too well in this game. But Tyron Hopper looked great against the run. Again, Christian Welch looked great. Another interception in this game. Should have had two, honestly. The first one went right through his hands, tipped, and the Ravens receiver almost caught it and ran it for a touchdown. It got ruled back. And then the second one, he tipped into the air and then kind of turned around and caught it. So kind of stone hands, but hey, he came up with the ball twice in 2 weeks. So really great, right place, right time for Christian Welch. And, you know, if the Packers keep 6 linebackers, he will be the 6th. It's just a matter of if they will. And it's the same thing for edge. Would they keep 6 edge guys, right? We know the first 5. Gary, Preston, LVN, Enigbare, Brenton Cox. I know some might argue that Brenton Cox isn't a lock. I think he is. Will they keep 6? If they do, it's probably going to be Aaron Mosby. I think this guy's been making a ton of plays the past couple of weeks. He has a guaranteed spot at least on the practice squad, in my opinion. Very interested to see what they go there. John Ford, I thought, was having a great game, and then, of course, got injured and carted into the locker room. Not that you want injuries to happen, but that kind of made that a little easier because it was like, oh, are you going to keep 6 interior guys? And John Ford, the 6th guy, because he's been having a good camp. There's a lot of confusion that came from this game, and you love to see it because you want these players to come and showcase, hey, I deserve to be on this roster. But man, it's making it a very, very tough decision on certain position groups. Anthony Johnson Jr. was playing very well. Like I said, I think he definitely makes the roster. I mean, he was coming down, making a ton of hits, picked up the fumble that was forced by Aaron Mosby for a touchdown. He was all over the field. Him and Kalen King were the 2 defensive backs in this game that seemed like they were in on almost every tackle. It was very impressive. In terms of tackle leaders, Christian Welch led the team with 6 total. Tyron Hopper had 5. Kalen King, 5 tackles, 3 solo tackles. That's impressive for a cornerback. He's not scared to come and play against the run. Anthony Johnson Jr. had 4. Christian Young, Jamon Green, Raylan Goforth all had 4. Tackling looked good out there in this game. And then we have special teams. Man, I really don't know what the Packers are going to do. I mean, every time it looks like it might be okay, something bad happens where, okay, Anders has been great this week. He made a 54-yarder. He made the 2 PATs. Then he goes out there and misses a 32-yard chip shot, and you're like, great. Now what? Not that we didn't have the concerns, but they're like kind of fading a little bit away to the back of your mind. You're like, all right, they're going to go with Anders. He's looking better. Okay, he just missed a 32-yarder. It sucks. I think the Packers keep Anders on the roster as their kicker, but similarly to backup quarterback, might just wait and see what happens around the league. And Matt LaFleur was asked about this after the game, and he said, quote, that's not a question for him. And that's more of a question for Gutekunst on if their kicker, starting kicker, is on the roster right now. That's a little concerning that he was just like, yep, we got our guy. No, he was like, that's not a question for me. So Packers definitely kind of weighing options there at kicker, it seems, and as they should. I mean, it's such an important part of the game, and we don't want to lose by a kicker, essentially. Again, I know there's more reason why we lost to the Niners, but also missing the kick, losing by 3, you know what I mean? It sucks, and it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. I mean, both finished with poor percentages this entire training camp preseason. Anders, 82%. Joseph, 79.2%. So it's simply not good enough. But I think the Packers go with Anders into week 1. Obviously, Alex Hale can be on the practice squad as an international guy, that 17th practice squad player. I think week 1, roster cut down day, 3 days from now, it's going to be Anders Carlson, but that could change very, very quickly. But let me know your guys' thought on kicker and everything else that happened in this game. Very, very excited for these next coming 3 days and what the Packers end up doing on this roster. But I appreciate you guys coming by to the video. If you could, please leave a like down below. It supports my channel a ton. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Pack, go.